Sula is a novel that is not only timeless, but it was definitely ahead of its time. The things that happen in this book today still affect Black women in the Black community as we speak. Hello, everyone. I'm author Aurel Raintree, and this is Reels and Reads, where I give honest reviews and occasional spoilers. Toni Morrison tells Scylla's story through the lens of gentrification, colorism, gender inequality, and the birth of Black feminism. This story is what happens when a woman, specifically a Black woman, refuses to be confined by her fear or boundaries, and what happens when a crab actually attempts to escape the bucket. Toni Morrison decides to start this tale off by giving us the history of the town of Medallion, which is known as the Bottom. It got its name through deception of a white man, where it's essentially the top of the hills, not the bottom of the hills. Now, anyone who knows anything knows that the valleys are where fertility lies when it comes to the old way of living, farming, etc. But the Black people were convinced that because the hills is the bottom of heaven, that's the place to be. They had no idea that in today's time that would actually be prime real estate, such as the Hollywood Hills. But at the time, they fell for something that was a lie when you consider the way technology had advanced at the time and the way food was produced. It was actually the worst plot of land. And that is such an important part of the plot when we get to the end of the book. There's a relationship between Sula and a man named Shadrach that is very poignant. Shadrach is a gentleman who originally feared death. He was petrified of it. He would overcome this fear and invent a holiday known as National Suicide Day, which does not sound anything like what you think it is. Whereas Sula is a woman who is not afraid of life. These two would meet in the middle when it comes to conquering their fears, with Shadrach conquering his fear over death, and Sula conquering her fear of life. And you would think, what is their fear when it comes to living life? Well, it all comes down to the type of life that Sula is expected to lead. The relationship between Nell and Scylla is a great contrast between the two gender roles that take place with the women in this community. Nell succumbs to the required, if you will, gender roles of all of the other women in the town. She gets domesticated immediately and doesn't even know why. In fact, she's rather ambiguous to it. She doesn't really care. It's one way or another. It's just what you're supposed to do. Whereas Scylla bucks the system completely. I mean, she's vehemently against being married and having children. She wants to be child free and she thinks that men deserve nothing. See how that works in today's society. And unfortunately for Nell, the only freedom she truly knows is through Sulla. She is living vicariously through her, all while maintaining the social norms that are expected of her. It is only after several tragedies that Nell realizes that without Sulla, she is never truly free. There is a poignant moment in the novel where Nell and Scylla are having a conversation, and Nell tries to convince Scylla that there's no way you're truly happy without a man, without conforming to gender norms. There's no way you can be happy. You're a Black woman. Like, you can't do what men do. Whereas Scylla looks at it and says, being Black and being a woman is the same as being a man. Essentially, what she says is, we're both oppressed. We both want to be free. We're both being treated terribly by white men. It's the same. So why can't I do what the men do? And in this novel, the men leave. The men will settle down, but ultimately leave. And Scylla's saying, why are you getting mad at me for doing what the men are doing? And unfortunately, Nell just doesn't have an answer. The Black community of the Bottom, aka Medallion, truly despise Sulla for her freedom. They despise the fact that she does whatever she wants, whenever she wants, without considering consequences, whether it's sexual conquests or just doing whatever it is she wants to do in general. She has no fear of living the life that, as a human being, she's entitled to live. Whereas the community she lives in says, we're Black, we can't go here, we can't do this. And as a woman, you must stay home and make babies and get fat and all of the other tropes. And if your man leaves you, well, that's just the way it is. Well, Scylla says, not for me. And so here's another quote that stuck with me. So it was rage, and a determination to take on a man's role anyhow that made him press Nell about settling down. Even the men in this book are only getting married because of their gender roles. They're not even getting married because they want to. Now, this quote really applies to the Black community today. But it was the men who gave her the final label, who fingerprinted her for all time. They were the ones who said she was guilty of the unforgivable thing, the thing for which there was no understanding, no excuse, no compassion, the route from which there was no way back, the dirt that could never ever be washed away. They said that Sula slept with white men. Oh, but we're not done. It goes on the next page. Sula underneath some white man, and it filled them with choking disgust. There was nothing lower she could do, nothing filthier. The fact that their own skin color was proof that it had happened in their own families was no deterrent to their bile, nor was the willingness of black men to lie in the beds of white women. They insisted that all unions between white men and black women be rape. For a black woman to be willing was literally unthinkable. In that way, they regarded integration with precisely the same venom that white people did. And this is so important with what's going on today, because just looking at social media, you see how black women are admonished for stepping outside of their race, whereas black men get to call it a preference. And it goes deeper than that, because these black men in this novel are doing so because it's a status symbol. And black men today still think it's a status symbol until those non-black women tell them, no, it's not a status symbol. We're looked down at for being with you. We just get the benefit of having mixed race babies and therefore access to your culture. Whereas black women, when they date outside their race, I hate to say it this way, but there is an elevation. They get access to more resources, they get access to more privileges. They still deal with racism, but it's not the same way it's dealt with black men. Black men truly hate when black women date outside their race because they get treated better in comparison to black men who date outside their race. Again, this book was completely timeless and ahead of its time all at once. Now, this last quote touches on gentrification. Except for the few blacks still huddled by the river bend and some undemolished houses on Carpenter's Road, only rich white folks were building homes in the hills. Just like that, they had changed their minds, and instead of keeping the valley floor to themselves, now they wanted a hilltop house with a river view and a ring of elms. The black people, for all their new looks, seemed awfully anxious to get to the valley or leave town and abandon the hills to whoever was interested. These young ones kept talking about the community, but they left the hills to the poor, the old, the stubborn, and the rich white folks. Maybe it hadn't been a community, but it had been a place. Now there weren't any places left, just separate houses with separate televisions and separate telephones, and less dropping by. Now, this is something that can be true of people of any ethnicity. But it's definitely true in a black community. The idea that we send our children away to go to college and come back and build the community is one that is not lost upon us. It's always been around. But what we find is our children go to college and don't come home. They start living the ways of our very own oppressors. And we all know how gentrification works, right? Once white people figure out that the better plot of land is where we are, they come in and they buy us out. So before, they had the better plot of land in the valley, but now that industrialization came along, you have the railroads, you have factories, they realize that the place to be is away from all that labor. They are better than everybody else, so they want to live on the hilltop so they can look down on everyone else. And to this day, in the case of, say, the Hollywood Hills, guess who really owns all those houses up there? It continues to happen to this day. The Oakland Hills, show me hills anywhere in the United States, and rich white people live there, and all of the poor, no matter what their ethnicity, lives down in the bottom, which is what we call it now. The only part of this book that didn't work for me was there was a moment or two, very, very limited moments, where we went from third person to first person and I wasn't expecting it. It also kind of pulled me out of the moment because I was drawn in by the third person storytelling. Hearing it from first person was also really, really magnetizing. It really drew me in even further because I got to hear it from their point of view, but it was a little drawing the one or two times that it happened, not enough to ruin the experience for me. Every black girl and woman from age 16 and up should read this book so that they can understand what it's like to conform to gender norms and what it's like to buck them. There are positive and negative consequences on both sides, but I think it's a book that is very necessary for black women to read and to discuss with each other. But I also think that black men in that same age group, age 16 and up, should read this so they can see the impact of what leaving does to women emotionally and financially and how it causes generational harm to walk away away from your family, to walk away from your hometown and not come back and improve it, how it really destroys Black wealth, Black generations, and the community as a whole. Of course, it's not all on Black men, but I definitely think that they should read it for those reasons. That's it for this review. Please let me know what Toni Morrison book you think I should read next. The only one I had read before this was The Bluest Eye, and I read that at an all-white school with a white teacher, so I didn't really receive it well. So I don't know, maybe that should be the next one I read. Maybe I should give it a reread. Otherwise, let me know in the comments which one you think I should read. Until then, Raintree out.